September 7, 1940. RAF Debadon, Essex, England. The operations room sits 30 feet underground, protected by concrete and sandbags, illuminated by harsh electric light that never changes, regardless of whether the sun shines or darkness falls above. Flight Lieutenant John Cunningham stands before the plotting table, watching coloured markers creep across the map of southeastern England, each one representing a German bomber formation heading toward London. There are dozens of them. Estimated 180 aircraft, the controller announces, his voice professionally calm despite the numbers. Altitude 12 to 15,000 feet. Current heading 270 degrees, speed 160 knots. Cunningham nods, though the gesture feels futile. Scramble orders have already gone out to every fighter squadron in 11 Group. Hurricanes and Spitfires are climbing into the late afternoon sky, vectored toward intercept positions by ground controllers reading radar plots. The system works, has been working all summer as RAF Fighter Command holds off the Luftwaffe's daylight offensive. But in 3 hours the sun will set, and when darkness falls, everything changes. Sir, a young WWII operator looks up from her headset. Air Vice Marshal Park is on the line for you. Cunningham takes the offered telephone. Cunningham here, sir. Keith Park's voice carries the weight of a man who hasn't slept properly in weeks. As commander of 11 Group, he's responsible for defending London and southeastern England, the primary target of Germany's bombing campaign. John, I want your honest assessment. When those bombers return tonight, and they will return tonight, how many can your night fighters intercept? The question demands honesty. Cunningham glances at the plotting table, calculating. With current methods, perhaps 2%, sir, 3 if we're extraordinarily lucky. The silence on the line stretches long enough that Cunningham wonders if they have been disconnected. Finally, Park speaks. 2%. Yes, sir. We can patrol known approach routes, hope to spot exhaust flames or silhouettes against cloud. If the weather cooperates, if the moon is bright, if the bombers maintain predictable courses, we might stumble across a few. But systematic interception in darkness, with current equipment, he doesn't finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The Prime Minister is asking why we can't stop night raids. The Cabinet wants answers. The public wants protection. Park's voice hardens slightly. I'm telling them we're developing new capabilities. Tell me I'm not lying, John. You're not lying, sir. We have prototypes, experimental systems, but proven operational capability? Cunningham chooses his words carefully. Not yet. Another silence. Then, how long until not yet becomes now? I honestly don't know, sir. Park disconnects without further comment. Cunningham hands the telephone back to the WAAF operator and returns his attention to the plotting table. The German bomber formations have crossed the coast now, spreading out across Kent and Surrey, beginning their approach runs toward London. Above ground, the daylight battle unfolds according to familiar patterns. RAF fighters intercept the German formations, diving through their bomber boxes, breaking up their cohesion, forcing them to jettison bombs early or abort their runs entirely. Radio chatter crackles through the operations room speakers, urgent, professional, occasionally punctuated by brief exclamations as aircraft are hit or pilots score kills. By sunset, the daylight raiders have been driven off. German losses: 41 aircraft confirmed destroyed. RAF losses: 28 fighters, though most pilots survived to fly again. Tactically, another British victory. Then the sun sets, and the real attack begins. The first wave arrives at 20:15 hours, guided by the Thames estuary, a silver ribbon reflecting starlight pointing directly toward London's heart. The German bombers fly individually or in loose pairs, spaced across an hour of time, making systematic interception nearly impossible. They navigate by landmarks visible in moonlight, rivers, railways, distinctive terrain features that stand out even in darkness. And they bomb with impunity. Cunningham stands outside the operations bunker now, watching the eastern sky light up with an orange glow as London burns. The sound reaches them even here, 15 miles from the city. the crump of exploding bombs, the drone of unsynchronized German engines, the sharper crack of anti-aircraft batteries firing blindly into darkness. 43 searchlights operating, someone reports. No illuminations yet. The searchlights lance upward, pale blue fingers probing the night sky, sweeping back and forth in patterns that look systematic but are essentially random. Occasionally, one catches a fleeting glimpse of metal, a wing surface, a fuselage, but the bombers are flying at 14,000 feet and the light can't hold them long enough for anti-aircraft guns to train and fire effectively. Any fighter intercepts? Squadron Leader Pleasance reports visual contact at 21:03, lost contact during pursuit, no engagement. Translation: A RAF night fighter pilot spotted a German bomber's exhaust flame, tried to close for attack and lost sight of his target in the darkness before getting within weapons range. It's the same story repeated across southeastern England tonight. Brief glimpses, failed pursuits, bombers that vanish like ghosts. The Luftwaffe crews know they're essentially untouchable after dark. German bomber pilots who would never dream of attacking London in daylight, where they'd face concentrated fighter opposition and heavy losses, cross the Channel each night with confidence bordering on contempt. The night belongs to them. By midnight, over 300 German bombers have struck London. The docks are burning. Warehouses in the East End are ablaze. Residential areas in Stepney, Whitechapel and Bermondsey have been devastated. Casualty reports are still coming in, but initial estimates suggest over 400 dead, more than 1,300 injured. RAF night fighters have made exactly 3 interceptions, destroying 1 German bomber confirmed and possibly damaging 2 others. 3 kills against 300 raiders, 1%. Cunningham returns to the operations room as the final all clear sounds near dawn. Around him, exhausted controllers and plotters are securing their stations, preparing shift change. No one speaks much. There's nothing to say. This will happen again tonight. And the night after, and the night after that. The blitz has begun, and Britain has no effective defence against nocturnal bombing. September 9th, 1940. Telecommunications Research Establishment. Worth Mattravers, Dorset. Dr. Edward Bowen squints through cigarette smoke at the oscilloscope display, watching a green trace dance across the phosphor screen. The image shows radar returns, radio wave reflections from a target aircraft flying somewhere in the darkness over Christchurch Bay. Range approximately 2 miles, bearing 30 degrees relative. Target is turning, observes Flying Officer WWII's crew from the pilot's seat. They're airborne in a Bristol Blenheim bomber, heavily modified with experimental radar equipment occupying what should be the bomb bay. Aerials protrude from the Blenheim's nose like insect antennae, ungainly, draggy, but functional. Bowen adjusts a control dial, refining the display. I have him. Turn left 10 degrees. Crew complies, banking the Blenheim gently. The target aircraft is a friendly, a Whitley bomber from a training unit playing the role of German raider. In real operations, it would be trying to evade. Tonight, it's cooperating, maintaining predictable courses to help Bowen refine his radar's performance. The system is called AI, Airborne Interception Radar. Bowen has been developing it for 2 years, fighting skepticism from senior RAF officers who doubt that radar equipment delicate enough to detect aircraft could be ruggedized sufficiently for operational use, or that pilots could interpret the displays while simultaneously flying combat aircraft in darkness. He's proved the critics wrong on technical grounds. The radar works. The question now is whether it works well enough, reliably enough, to transform night fighting from luck-based hunting into systematic interception. Range closing, Bowen reports. 1.5 minutes, bearing steady. Crew advances throttle slightly, closing the gap. This is the critical phase, getting close enough for visual acquisition without overshooting the target. At night, in darkness, the pilot needs the radar operator to guide him to within a few hundred yards. Then, if conditions allow, he might spot the target's exhaust flames or silhouette and complete the interception visually. 1 mile, bearing drifting right, turn right 5 degrees. The intercept dance continues. Crew following Bowen's directions, the radar operator calling adjustments, the range gradually decreasing. At half a mile, crew begins scanning visually, looking for any sign of the target aircraft. I have nothing visual yet. Half mile, bearing steady. He's straight ahead. 300 yards, 200. Crew's night-adapted eyes scan desperately. Nothing but darkness and stars. Finally, at 150 yards, he spots it. A faint cruciform shape silhouetted against scattered cloud, directly ahead. Visual. Target acquired. In a real engagement, this would be the moment to open fire. 4.303 machine guns in the Blenheim's nose, converging their fire at close range. The German bomber would have perhaps 2 seconds warning before cannon shells and bullets tore through cockpit and engines. Instead, crew maintains position for 30 seconds, confirming visual contact, then breaks away. The Whitley pilot, watching for the intercept, transmits congratulations over the radio. Back at Worth May Traverse, they land as dawn breaks. Bowen climbs stiffly from the Blenheim, his back aching from hours hunched over the radar display. Ground crew immediately swarm the aircraft, already preparing it for the next test flight scheduled for tonight. Squadron leader Geoffrey Tuttle, the officer commanding the experimental night fighter unit, approaches across the tarmac. Successful intercept? Yes, Bowen confirms. 3rd consecutive night. The radar is performing consistently now. Detection range averages 3 miles, occasionally better. We can guide fighters to visual acquisition range in most conditions. Most conditions? Clear nights with reasonable visibility. Cloud degrades performance. Heavy rain can blind the radar entirely. But in workable weather, yes, we can find them. Tuttle nods slowly. He's a fighter pilot, not a scientist, but he understands what Bowen is offering. The ability to hunt German bombers systematically, rather than relying on chance encounters. How many aircraft could you equip? Immediately, I mean. Not theoretical production, but actual hardware you can install right now. Bowen considers. We have 6 complete AI Mark IV systems ready for installation. Another 12 will be available within 2 weeks if production goes smoothly. 18 aircraft. Tuttle's expression is thoughtful. Not enough to defend all of Britain, but enough to prove the concept operationally. Enough to start killing German bombers in numbers they'll notice. Theoretically, yes, but we need the right aircraft. The Blenheim is too slow. It can barely catch a Heinkel, and if they take evasive action, we lose them. We need something faster, something with better climb rate and heavier armament. What do you need? Bristol Beaufighter, twin-engine heavy fighter, 420mm cannon plus 6 machine guns, top speed about 330 miles per hour. Fast enough to catch anything the Germans are flying at night, and it has room for the radar equipment plus a dedicated operator. Tuttle's eyes light up. The Beaufighter is brand new, only just entering service. Fast, powerful, heavily armed. It's designed as a long-range escort fighter and anti-shipping aircraft. Using it for night fighting would require diverting precious production, pulling aircraft from other priority missions. But if it works... I'll talk to Air Ministry, Tuttle says. See if we can get priority allocation for a dozen Beaufighters. But Edward, I need you to understand something. Every aircraft, every pilot, every gallon of fuel we allocate to night fighting is being taken from day operations, from the fighter squadrons defending Britain against daylight raids. We're already stretched thin. If your radar doesn't work operationally, if we commit resources to this and it fails, good men will die because we didn't have enough conventional fighters in the right places. Bowen meets his gaze steadily. It will work. I can't promise perfection. Some bombers will still get through. Weather will limit us. Equipment will fail occasionally. But we can transform night defence from a bad joke into a real threat. Give me the Beaufighters and I'll prove it. The bureaucratic machinery grinds with surprising speed. By late September, authorization comes through for an experimental night fighter squadron, 604 Squadron, to be equipped with 12 radar-equipped Beaufighters and based at Middle Wallop in Hampshire. The squadron will be commanded by squadron leader Geoffrey Tuttle himself, with John Cunningham as one of his flight commanders. The aircraft arrive in early October, massive by single-seat fighter standards, 41 feet long, engines producing 1,400 horsepower each, armament that could shred a bomber in seconds. The radar equipment is installed in workshops at Worth Matravers, technicians working around the clock to fit the AI Mark IV sets into the Beaufighters' noses. Training begins immediately. Pilots must learn to fly on instruments in total darkness, trusting their radar operators completely during the critical interception phase. Radar operators must master their equipment, interpreting the green traces on their oscilloscope displays, guiding their pilots through three-dimensional intercepts while being thrown around in turbulent night skies. It's demanding, exhausting work. Some crews wash out, unable to develop the necessary coordination. But those who succeed form partnerships that transcend normal crew relationships. Pilot and radar operator functioning as a single entity, each compensating for the other's limitations, each essential to survival and success. The critics watch and wait. Senior RAF officers who've built their careers on daylight fighter tactics regard the whole enterprise with skepticism bordering on hostility. Radar is unproven in combat. Night fighting is a specialist skill that diverts resources from more important missions. The Beaufighter is needed elsewhere. Let them send up conventional fighters on standing patrols, the critics argue. Let the anti-aircraft guns and searchlights do their job. This radar obsession is a waste of effort. But every night, German bombers continue striking British cities with impunity. And every night, conventional defences fail to stop them. On October 19, 1940, 604 Squadron declares itself operational. 12 Beaufighters equipped with AI radar, 12 crews trained to operational standard, ready to prove that darkness no longer protects German bombers. The skeptics are about to be answered. November 19, 1940. Middle Wallop, Hampshire. 22:47 hours. The telephone jangles in the dispersal hut, shattering the tense quiet where 6 Beaufighter crews wait in flying gear, playing cards they're not concentrating on, drinking tea that's gone cold. Flight Lieutenant John Cunningham picks up on the second ring. Scramble, the controller's voice says simply. Vector 090, Angels 15. Trade inbound from Cherbourg. Good hunting. Understood. Cunningham drops the phone and turns to the room. We're up. Charlie, follow me. The crews explode into motion, grabbing helmets, Mae Wests, parachutes. Cunningham's radar operator, Sergeant Jimmy Rawnsley, is already at the door, his leather flying jacket half-zipped. They've flown together for 6 weeks now, building the intuitive understanding that makes effective night fighter crews. Rawnsley is 22 years old, a working-class kid from Bristol with an uncanny ability to interpret the flickering radar displays. Cunningham trusts him completely. Outside, the November night is cold and clear, good hunting weather. Stars scattered across black velvet, no moon yet, visibility unlimited in the darkness. The kind of night when German bombers can navigate by landmarks, but British defenders struggle to find them. Until now, Cunningham's Beaufighter, C. Charlie, sits on the perimeter track, engines already warmed by ground crew. He climbs into the left seat, while Rawnsley settles into the radar operator's position behind and to the right, surrounded by his equipment. The AI Mark IV radar occupies most of the available space: transmitter, receiver, display oscilloscope, control panels. It looks fragile, delicate, unsuited for the violent environment of night combat. Cunningham runs through the pre-takeoff checklist with practice speed, fuel pressures, oil temperatures, magneto checks, everything green. He advances throttles and séquimacé. Charlie rolls forward, gathering speed across grass that's slick with evening dew. At 80 knots, he rotates and the Beaufighter lifts it into darkness. Middle Wallop, seek Charlie airborne. T. Charlie, roger, steer 090, climb to Angels 15. Trade is currently 60 miles southeast, heading 270, estimated altitude 13,000. Will vector you to intercept. Cunningham acknowledges and settles into the climb, instruments glowing softly on the panel before him. Outside the cockpit, total blackness. No horizon, no ground reference, nothing but stars above and void below. Flying in these conditions requires absolute trust in instruments, a lesson drilled into every night fighter pilot after too many spatial disorientation accidents. Behind him, Rawnsley switches on the AI radar. The oscilloscope screen comes alive with green phosphorescence, showing two traces, one for azimuth, left-right bearing, one for elevation, up-down angle. At maximum range, perhaps 5 miles, the radar might detect a bomber. But right now, the screen shows only grass, random noise, interference, ground returns. They level at 15,000 feet, heading east toward the reported bomber stream. Cunningham scans his instruments constantly: airspeed, altitude, heading, engine temperatures, everything normal. The Beaufighter flies smoothly, its powerful Bristol Hercules engines pulling them through the night at 250 miles per hour. C. Charlie, targets bearing 085, range 30 miles, same altitude, turn right 5 degrees. Cunningham complies, adjusting course. Somewhere ahead in the darkness, German bombers are heading toward London. Heinkels or Dorniers or Yonkers. Navigation lights extinguished. Crews confident in their nocturnal immunity. They've been making this trip for 10 weeks now, losing aircraft occasionally to lucky searchlight illuminations or chance encounters with patrolling fighters, but mostly operating with impunity. Tonight, that changes. Range 20 miles, the controller updates. Steer 087. You should pick them up on AI any moment. Rawnsley leans closer to his display, adjusting gain and tuning controls. The radar pulses outward into darkness, radio waves searching for metal surfaces to reflect from. Maximum range with the Mark IV is about 3 miles under ideal conditions, more often 2 miles or less, depending on target size and aspect angle. I have nothing yet, Rawnsley reports, his voice calm. They've practiced this scenario dozens of times, know the drill by heart. Range 15 miles, the controller calls. Target spreading out now. Count 6 individual contacts. Cunningham does mental arithmetic. 15 miles at their closing speed gives them about 3 minutes until they're within radar range. He flexes his fingers on the control column, feeling the Beaufighter respond to minute inputs. The aircraft is heavier than a Hurricane or Spitfire, but surprisingly agile for its size. And the firepower, 4 20mm Hispano cannons in the belly, each loaded with 60 rounds of high-explosive shells plus 6.303 machine guns in the wings, enough to destroy a bomber with a single accurate burst, if they can find one. Range 10 miles, turn left to 083. You should be closing on the westernmost contact. Roger. Cunningham makes the adjustment. Behind him, Rawnsley is completely focused on the oscilloscope, watching for the first sign of contact. 5 miles. 4. The ground controller's vectors are bringing them into the bomber stream, but individual intercepts must be accomplished with the AI radar. This is the transition point where controlled interception becomes autonomous hunting. 3 miles. Contact! Rawnsley's voice spikes with excitement, bearing 085, range 2.5 miles, slightly high. Cunningham feels his heart rate increase. First operational AI contact. This is what they've trained for, what the skeptics said was impossible. Talk me in, Jimmy. Turn right 2 degrees. Target is dead ahead. Range 2 miles, 300 feet high. Cunningham adjusts course and begins a gentle climb. The interception is a 3-dimensional geometry problem, matching the target's heading, altitude and speed while closing from behind. Rush the approach and you overshoot. Too slow and the target escapes. The pilot must fly smoothly while the radar operator solves the geometry. Range 1.5 miles. You're slightly low. Climb 100 feet. The Beaufighter responds to Cunningham's control inputs, rising through the darkness. Somewhere ahead, invisible, a German bomber flies toward London carrying high explosive and incendiary bombs. Its crew has no idea they're being stalked. 1 mile, bearing steady. You're in good position. Cunningham reduces throttle slightly, preventing an overshoot. His eyes scan ahead, searching for any visual sign. Exhaust flames, a silhouette, anything. But there's only darkness. Half mile dead ahead, same altitude. Now Cunningham spots it. 4 faint blue flames from exhaust stacks, arranged in 2 pairs. Twin-engine bomber, Engines running normally, no evasive action. The range closes rapidly. 400 yards, 300. At 250 yards, Cunningham identifies the type. Junkers Ju-88, one of Germany's most modern bombers. Fast, well armed with defensive guns carrying a substantial bomb load. Under normal circumstances, a dangerous opponent. But the Ju-88's crew still doesn't know they're being followed. Cunningham closes to 200 yards, directly astern and slightly below. The classic fighter attack position. His right thumb rests on the cannon firing button. Through the reflector gun sight, the Junkers appears as a dark cross against slightly less dark sky. Steady, he murmurs to himself. Steady. At 150 yards, he presses the firing button. The Beaufighter shudders as all 420mm cannons fire simultaneously, their muzzle flashes illuminating the night in strobing bursts. The high explosive shells, each weighing 4 ounces, travelling at 2,800 feet per second, cross the intervening space in less than 1/10 of a second. The effect on the Junkers is catastrophic. Shells punch through thin aluminum skin, detonating inside the fuselage and wings. Cunningham sees chunks of metal tear away, sees flame erupt from the starboard engine, sees the bomber lurch violently to the right as its pilot realises too late that he's under attack. Cunningham fires again, a 3-second burst that expends 30 rounds per cannon. More hits. The Junker's port engine explodes, fuel tanks ignite, the entire aircraft becomes a torch falling through darkness. Pieces separate from the main structure as the bomber breaks apart under the combined effects of battle damage and aerodynamic stress. "He's going down," Rawnsley calls, watching the blazing wreckage spiral earthward. Cunningham doesn't follow. His job is to hunt more bombers, not watch victims crash. He banks away, resuming patrol altitude, already calling middle wallop for vectors to the next target. "Charlie, outstanding. Confirm 1 destroyed?" "Confirmed. 1 Ju-88 destroyed. Requesting further vectors." On the ground, controllers watching the radar plot see the German contact disappear from their screens. A moment later, the Royal Observer Corps reports a large fire on the ground near Andover, impact site of the destroyed bomber. The skeptics in the operations room stop talking. First operational kill using AI radar. The system works. "C, Charlie, steer 095. Multiple contacts ahead, range 20 miles. Cunningham points the Beaufighter's nose toward fresh hunting grounds, adrenaline still surging through his system. Behind him, Rawnsley resets his radar, preparing for the next intercept. They have fuel for another 90 minutes of patrol, time enough for more kills. By dawn, Cunningham has destroyed 2 German bombers, the Ju-88 and a Heinkel He 111, caught climbing away from London after dropping its bombs. Other 604 squadron crews claim 3 more confirmed destroyed and 2 probables. 5 confirmed kills in a single night, using radar-equipped night fighters. The Luftwaffe loses more bombers to British night fighters in 12 hours than in the previous 6 weeks combined. November the 20th, 1940. Luftwaffe Operations Headquarters, Pas-de-Calais, France. Oberst Josef Kammhuber, commander of German night fighter forces, reads the overnight loss reports with growing concern. 7 bombers failed to return from the London raid, an unusually high loss rate for night operations. More troubling are the survivor reports. Hauptmann Werner Hoffmann, pilot of a Heinkel. He 111 that barely escaped destruction, describes his experience in the debriefing. No warning whatsoever. First indication of attack was cannon fire hitting our port wing. We took violent evasive action, diving away, and the fighter did not pursue. But Herr Oberst, the attack came from directly astern, in total darkness, from perfect firing position. This was not a chance encounter. Kammhuber underlines that last sentence. Not a chance encounter. The implication is clear. The British have developed some method of finding German bombers systematically in darkness. But what method? Could it have been searchlight-assisted, his intelligence officer suggests? Perhaps the British have refined their coordination between searchlights and fighters. Hoffmann reports no searchlight activity in the vicinity of his attack, Kamhuber replies. Neither do any of the other crews who reported fighter contact. They describe attacks coming from darkness, without warning, from ideal firing positions. He stands, walks to the map covering one wall of his office. Coloured pins mark the previous night's bomber routes, targets and loss locations. The pattern is telling. Losses occurred over a relatively small geographic area in central southern England, suggesting concentration of effective defences rather than random encounters. They have something new, Kamhuber says quietly, some capability we don't fully understand yet. We need to find out what it is. But British security around AI radar is tight. German intelligence knows the British have ground-based radar. That's been obvious since before the war began. But airborne radar? The concept seems technically implausible. How could delicate radio equipment function in the violent environment of a fighter aircraft? How could a pilot interpret radar displays while flying in darkness? The Germans will spend months trying to answer these questions, capturing fragments of information from interrogated British aircrews, analysing wreckage from shot-down British fighters, monitoring British radio frequencies for telltale transmissions. By the time they fully understand what they're facing, British night fighters will have evolved from experimental curiosity to strategic threat. December 1940 through March 1941. The night fighter offensive builds momentum. More squadrons convert to radar-equipped Beaufighters. The AI Mark IV radar receives continuous improvements. Better range, more reliable components, clearer displays. Tactics evolve as crews gain experience. Ground controllers learn to vector fighters more efficiently. Pilots and radar operators develop hunting techniques optimised for the equipment's strengths and limitations. John Cunningham becomes the public face of night fighting success. By February 1941, he has 12 confirmed kills, all achieved at night using AI radar. The press nicknames him Cat's Eyes Cunningham, and the RAF's propaganda department encourages the myth that his success comes from exceptional night vision enhanced by eating carrots, a deliberate deception to conceal the role of radar. The carrot story is nonsense, but it serves its purpose. German intelligence wastes effort investigating British fighter pilots' diets, while the real secret, airborne radar, remains protected. Behind the propaganda, the reality is more complex and more impressive. Night fighting in 1941 remains difficult, dangerous work. The AI radar is temperamental, prone to failure, limited in range and accuracy. Weather restricts operations. Heavy rain, thick cloud, or severe turbulence can make interceptions impossible. Equipment failures are common. Some nights, crews fly patrol after patrol without making contact despite controllers vectoring them toward known bomber streams. But increasingly, they succeed. The kill rate climbs from 2% to 5%, then to 8%. Still not enough to stop the German bombing campaign, but enough to force the Luftwaffe to take notice, to adapt tactics, to acknowledge that British night defences are no longer negligible. German bomber crews begin reporting fighter zones, areas where they regularly encounter British night fighters. They develop evasion techniques, flying at extreme altitudes where British fighters struggle to follow, taking indirect routes that avoid known fighter patrol areas, diving to low altitude when attacked to break radar contact. The technological arms race intensifies. Germany develops its own airborne radar for night fighters defending the Reich. Britain improves the AI radar, developing the Mark VII with significantly better performance. Electronic countermeasures appear, equipment designed to jam or deceive enemy radar. But through late 1940 and early 1941, British night fighters hold a decisive technological advantage. They can find German bombers in conditions where German crews believe themselves invisible, and they kill with ruthless efficiency once contact is made. May 10, 1941. London, England. The Luftwaffe launches its heaviest night raid of the war, 505 bombers attacking London in a final massive blow before Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union requires transferring bomber units eastward. The raid causes tremendous destruction. 1,436 civilians killed, More than 1,800 seriously injured, much of the City of London set ablaze. But the raid also marks a turning point. British night fighters destroy 33 German bombers, a 6.5% loss rate, the highest of any major raid on Britain. The Beaufighter crews alone account for 23 confirmed kills, prowling the darkness above southern England like predators, their AI radars giving them what amounts to supernatural vision in the night. Cunningham personally destroys 3 bombers that night, bringing his total to 19 kills. Other pilots, men like Brum, Crew, Stevens, Stubbs, are building their own scores, proving that radar-directed night fighting is reproducible, teachable, scalable. After May 10th, the character of the blitz changes, but her raids become less frequent as the Luftwaffe redirects resources toward the Eastern Front. When raids do occur, German bombers increasingly avoid the fighter zones, taking longer routes, accepting reduced bomb loads to carry extra fuel for evasive routing. The skies over Britain are no longer a free fire zone for German bombers. Darkness no longer guarantees safety. The technological advantage has shifted, and German aircrews know it. In June 1941, RAF Fighter Command receives a captured Luftwaffe intelligence document, a briefing for bomber crews on British night defences. The section on night fighters contains this warning. British fighters are now equipped with detection devices of unknown type, allowing interception in total darkness and adverse weather. Crews should assume they may be under observation at any time when over Britain, regardless of visibility conditions. Evasive action at first sign of fighter contact is mandatory. Detection devices of unknown type. The Germans still don't fully understand what they're facing, but they've learned to fear it. July 3rd, 1941. RAF West Mulling, Kent. 23:15 hours. Wing Commander John Cunningham leans against the operations room wall, nursing lukewarm coffee and watching the plotting table with tired eyes. He's 24 years old now, promoted to command of 604 Squadron after 6 months of sustained success. 23 confirmed kills make him Britain's leading night fighter ace. The decorations have followed: Distinguished Flying Cross, Distinguished Service Order, mentions in dispatches. The newspapers call him a hero. Tonight, he feels like a hunter who's suddenly realised the game is changing. The plotting table shows an unusual pattern: German bombers approaching the English coast in multiple small formations, widely dispersed at varied altitudes. Not the concentrated streams of earlier raids, but scattered individuals taking independent routes toward their targets. They're adapting, observes squadron leader Derek Jackson, the squadron's new signals officer. Jackson is a physicist in civilian life, recruited for his expertise in radar and radio systems. Dispersed formations make ground control interception more difficult. We can only vector fighters toward one contact at a time. While we're chasing one bomber, 5 others slip through. Cunningham nods slowly. The Germans aren't stupid. They've analysed their losses, identified patterns, modified tactics accordingly. The easy kills of November and December, bombers flying predictable routes, maintaining steady courses, are becoming rare. Modern Luftwaffe bomber crews jink and weave, change altitude randomly, take circuitous paths that add fuel consumption but reduce interception probability. More troubling are the intelligence reports of German technical developments. Prisoners of war mention new electronic equipment being installed in bombers, devices that allegedly detect British radar transmissions, giving crews warning when they're being tracked. If true, it eliminates the element of surprise that makes radar-directed interception so effective. Scramble order, a WAAF controller calls. Hostile contact, 50 miles southeast, altitude 18,000, heading 320. Cunningham Standing Patrol Aircraft, M. Mother, crewed by Flying Officer Stevens and Sergeant Bishop. Acknowledge and begin their intercept run. On the table, coloured markers track the convergence: red for hostile, blue for friendly. Cunningham watches the geometry develop, the ground controller vectors M. Mother toward intercept, calling course corrections every 30 seconds. The range decreases steadily: 40 miles, 35, 30. Then something unexpected happens. The German bomber, previously maintaining steady heading toward London, abruptly turns south. Not gentle course adjustment, a sharp 90-degree turn, as if the pilot suddenly decided to abort his mission. Mother, hostile is turning away. Come left to 180 to pursue. Stevens acknowledges, but Cunningham can already see the problem developing. The bomber's turn puts it on a diverging course, opening the range. Mother must turn to follow, losing speed in the process. By the time they complete their turn and accelerate back to pursuit speed, the German aircraft has gained distance. Contact lost, Bishop reports 3 minutes later. Target has disappeared from AI display. Estimate he descended below our altitude and accelerated away. The hostile marker is removed from the plotting table. Another bomber escapes to strike its target unopposed. Cunningham sets down his coffee cup. That wasn't random. He knew we were there. Turned away before the fighter got within AI range. Jackson nods grimly. Tail warning radar. The Germans must have developed it faster than we anticipated. Their bombers can now detect our AI radar emissions from behind, giving them warning before our fighters can close to visual range. It's a sobering development. The technological cat-and-mouse game has entered a new phase. British night fighters use radar to find German bombers in darkness. Now German bombers use radar warning receivers to detect British fighters and evade before interception occurs. The advantage of surprise, the crucial edge that made early radar interceptions so successful, is diminishing. How do we counter it? Cunningham asks. Jackson pulls out a cigarette, taps it against his case thoughtfully. Several options. We can develop radar that operates on different frequencies their warning receivers can't detect. We can reduce our AI radar's power output, making it harder to detect at long range, though that also reduces our own detection range. Or we can change tactics, using the AI radar sparingly, making final approach on instruments and hoping to spot them visually before they detect us electronically. All of which reduce our effectiveness. Yes. Welcome to electronic warfare, John. Every advantage generates a counter-advantage. Every innovation spawns a counter-innovation. The only certainty is that nothing stays static. August 1941. The Luftwaffe's night bombing campaign against Britain intensifies again after the summer lull. But the character has changed fundamentally. Gone are the massive raids of 200-plus bombers concentrated against single targets. Instead, the Germans employ what they call Störangriffe, nuisance raids, sending dozens of individual bombers to strike scattered targets across Britain, forcing defenders to disperse their forces rather than concentrating them along predictable routes. British night fighters adapt. New tactics emphasize patience and persistence. Crews learn to approach targets with AI radar switched off until the last moment, reducing warning time. Ground controllers develop techniques for vectoring fighters toward the most promising intercepts rather than spreading resources too thin. And new aircraft arrive. The de Havilland Mosquito enters service with night fighter squadrons in January 1942, bringing performance that exceeds even the Beaufighter. Faster, more manoeuvrable, with improved AI Mark 8 radar, the Wooden Wonder transforms night fighting yet again. German bombers that could occasionally outrun Beaufighters find themselves helpless against Mosquitoes capable of 380 miles per hour at altitude. Cunningham transitions to Mosquitoes in March 1942, finding the aircraft's handling a revelation after the heavy Beaufighter. His first kill in a Mosquito comes on March 15th, a Dornier Du 217 intercepted over the Channel, destroyed with a single, precise burst of cannon fire. The kill brings his total to 28, but the numbers tell only part of the story. What matters more is the systematic nature of night fighting by mid-1942. What began as experimental technology operated by a handful of specialist crews has become standard RAF practice. Dozens of squadrons fly radar-equipped night fighters. Hundreds of crews are trained in AI interception techniques. Ground control infrastructure covers all of Britain, with backup systems and redundant facilities to ensure continuous operation. The dark skies that once protected German bombers have become hunting grounds where British fighters prowl with technological eyes that pierce darkness. April the 28th, 1942. Lübeck, Germany. Oberleutnant Ludwig Becker climbs into his Messerschmitt Bf-110 night fighter, settling into the cockpit with practiced ease. Behind him, his radar operator Feldwebel Staub performs final equipment checks on their Liechtenstein BC radar, Germany's answer to British AI, mounted in the Bf-110's nose with distinctive antler-like antennae that create significant drag but provide detection capability the Luftwaffe desperately needs. Tonight's mission: defend Hamburg against RAF bombing. British intelligence suggests a major raid is planned, likely using their new 4-engine heavy bombers, Lancasters, Halifaxes, Stirlings. Large, capable of carrying massive bomb loads, but also slow and relatively easy to intercept once located, if they can be located. Becker starts engines, taxis to the runway, takes off into darkness. His orders are to patrol at 20,000 feet along the expected bomber approach route, using the Liechtenstein radar to find targets. Standard night fighter tactics, the same concepts the British pioneered, now employed by both sides. The Liechtenstein has better range than early British eye radars, up to 4 kilometres under ideal conditions. But it's finicky, requiring constant adjustment, prone to ground clutter that can hide genuine contacts among false returns. Staub is skilled, one of the best radar operators in the Nachtjagd, but even he struggles sometimes. Contact, Staub reports 15 minutes into the patrol. Bearing 015, range 3 kilometres, altitude approximately our level. Becker turns toward the contact, advancing throttles. The Bf-110 accelerates, its twin Daimler-Benz engines providing adequate if not spectacular performance. Ahead somewhere in darkness, a British bomber flies toward Hamburg, carrying bombs that will kill German civilians, destroy German industry. Range 2.5 kilometres, bearing steady, target appears to be maintaining straight course. The interception develops exactly as training prescribed. Staub calls corrections. Becker flies the geometry. Range closes steadily. At 1 kilometre, Becker begins searching visually for exhaust flames or silhouette. 800 metres. Nothing visible yet. The night is cloudy, no moon, visibility poor. Becker trusts his radar operator completely, following instructions precisely. 500 metres, dead ahead. Becker spots it. 4 faint glows from engine exhausts arranged in a squared pattern. Lancaster bomber, Britain's newest heavy, capable of carrying 14,000 pounds of bombs deep into Germany. His heart rate increases as he closes to 300 metres, positioning for the classic shot from below and behind. The Lancaster's gunners haven't seen him yet. The British bomber maintains steady course, unaware of the hunter closing from darkness. At 200 metres, Becker fires. His two 20mm cannons and 4 7.92mm machine guns converge their fire on the Lancaster's fuselage and wings. He sees strikes, bright flashes where shells impact, pieces flying off, flame erupting from one engine. The Lancaster's rear gunner returns fire, tracer rounds arcing toward Becker's Bf-11. Oh, but the shooting is wild, desperate. The British gunner can't see his target clearly, is firing at muzzle flashes. Several rounds hit Becker's aircraft. He hears them strike metal, but nothing vital is damaged. He fires again, emptying his remaining ammunition into the stricken bomber. The Lancaster's port wing tanks explode, the entire aircraft becoming a fireball that lights up the night sky for miles. Becker banks away sharply, avoiding debris from the disintegrating bomber. "Confirmed destroyed," Staub reports, his voice professional despite excitement. "First kill with Liechtenstein." Becker feels satisfaction, but not celebration. He shot down a bomber that would have reached Hamburg, killed its crew of 7 men. Necessary work, defending the fatherland, but not something to celebrate, just a job that must be done. By morning, Becker and other German night fighters have destroyed 23 RAF bombers, 5.2% of the attacking force. Not enough to stop the raid, not enough to prevent significant damage to Hamburg, but enough to prove that Germany can contest British bomber streams at night, using the same radar technology Britain employed against German raids. The hunters have indeed become hunted. The escalation continues throughout 1942 and into 1943. Both sides refine their technology, improve their tactics, train more crews. The night skies over Europe become battlegrounds where invisible electronic eyes peer through darkness, where hunters and hunted reverse roles depending on whose aircraft carries bombs and whose carries interceptors. British Bomber Command loses thousands of aircraft to German night fighters. Entire raids are decimated by skilled Nachtjagd crews using radar and vectors from ground controllers. The loss rates climb, 4%, 5%, sometimes exceeding 8% on particularly well-defended targets. But British night fighters also evolve. Mosquito squadrons begin flying intruder missions over occupied Europe, hunting German night fighters as they take off or land, disrupting the defensive system. Electronic countermeasures become increasingly sophisticated, jamming equipment, radar decoys, chaff clouds that blind enemy radar. By 1943, night combat has become as technologically complex as daylight fighting, perhaps more so. The difference is visibility, or rather, the lack of it. Success depends on electronics, on radio discipline, on the skill of ground controllers and radar operators as much as pilot ability. John Cunningham continues flying operationally through 1943 despite his seniority and the availability of staff positions. His score reaches 29 confirmed kills, making him one of the RAF's most successful night fighter pilots. But he knows the numbers are somewhat arbitrary. Plenty of skilled crews score fewer kills simply because they flew fewer missions or had worse luck with equipment reliability. What matters more is what they've collectively achieved, transforming night air defence from futile gestures to effective force. The skeptics who mocked the early radar experiments have been silenced by operational results. Night fighters are now integral to air defence, their presence assumed in all operational planning. December 17, 1943. RAF Hunsdon, Hertfordshire. Cunningham briefs his squadron on a new mission profile, standing patrols over the North Sea, intercepting German reconnaissance aircraft, attempting to photograph British ports and air bases. The work is tedious, long patrols over water, often in poor weather, chasing contacts that frequently turn out to be friendly aircraft or radar ghosts. But occasionally they find legitimate targets. Tonight, Cunningham himself is flying, partnered with his regular radar operator, Flight Lieutenant Jimmy Rawnsley. They've been together since the early days at Middle Wallop, 3 years of operations building an almost telepathic understanding. Rawnsley knows how Cunningham flies, can anticipate his reactions. Cunningham trusts Rawnsley's radar interpretation absolutely. They patrol at 15,000 feet, 50 miles east of the English coast. The North Sea stretches dark and featureless below, occasional whitecaps visible in moonlight, their mosquito handles beautifully, responding to minute control inputs, economical on fuel despite high performance. Contact, Rawnsley reports, bearing 090, range 4 miles, crossing left to right. Cunningham turns to intercept, advancing throttles. The geometry is complex, a crossing target rather than head-on or tail chase. Rawnsley solves it instinctively, calling corrections that position them perfectly. Range 2 miles, turn right 10 degrees. Target is accelerating. Fast target then. Probably a Junkers Ju-88 reconnaissance variant, capable of 350 miles per hour at altitude. One of the few German aircraft that can still challenge a Mosquito's speed. Cunningham pushes the throttles to maximum power. The Merlin engines respond with rising howl, propellers biting air, airspeed building rapidly. 320 miles per hour, 340, 360. Range 1.5 miles, bearing steady. You're gaining slowly. The chase continues for 8 minutes, both aircraft at full power, the range closing in tiny increments. At 3/4 of a mile, Cunningham spots exhaust flames, twin blue glows from a Ju-88's engines. Visual contact. I have him. He closes to 400 yards, directly astern, the Ju-88 apparently unaware of pursuit despite its tail warning radar. Perhaps the equipment isn't working. Perhaps the operator isn't paying attention. Either way, the German aircraft maintained steady course, making itself an easy target. At 300 yards, bombarded, Cunningham fires. The Mosquito's 4 20mm cannons hammer, muzzle flashes strobing, shells crossing the intervening space in fractions of a second. Hits sparkle along the WWII's fuselage and wings. The port engine explodes, flames streaming back along the wing. The WWIII rolls inverted and dives, streaming fire and debris. Cunningham doesn't follow. There's no need. The German aircraft is finished, its crew beyond saving. He watches it fall toward the dark sea far below, then banks away to resume patrol. Confirmed destroyed, Rawnsley reports matter-of-factly, number 29. 29 kills, but Cunningham knows that number is meaningless in isolation. What matters is the system, the integration of radar, ground control, well-trained crews and capable aircraft. What matters is that British night fighters can now patrol aggressively, hunting enemy aircraft over enemy-controlled territory, making the darkness work for Britain rather than against it. The Germans who mocked the early night fighters with their experimental radar equipment have long since stopped laughing. German bomber crews who once crossed the Channel with confidence now scan darkness nervously, knowing that British fighters might be stalking them with electronic eyes. The technology that skeptics dismissed as impractical has revolutionised warfare. May 8, 1945. RAF Hunsdon, Hertfordshire. The war in Europe ends. Church bells ring across Britain. Crowds celebrate in streets. Servicemen and women embrace their loved ones. In the officers' mess at Hunsdon, Cunningham's squadron gathers for quiet drinks, reflecting on 5.5 years of war. The final accounting shows staggering numbers. RAF night fighters destroyed more than 3,000 German aircraft, bombers, reconnaissance planes, transport aircraft. German night fighters, using the same technology Britain pioneered, destroyed over 6,000 British bombers. The electronic warfare that began with crude experimental radar in Bristol Blenheims evolved into sophisticated systems that defined night combat. Cunningham never flew operationally after December 1943, spending the war's final 18 months in staff positions and test flying duties. His final score, 29 confirmed kills, all achieved at night using AI radar. But he knows the numbers obscure more than they reveal. The real achievement wasn't individual scores. It was proving that darkness could be conquered through technology, that systematic interception was possible in conditions where visual acquisition seemed impossible. It was transforming night air defence from desperate improvisation into professional competence. Strange thing, Rawnsley observes, nursing a whiskey beside Cunningham. When we started, everyone said it couldn't work. Radar was too delicate for combat aircraft. Pilots couldn't interpret the displays. The whole concept was fantasy. And now? Now it's so standard that people forget it was ever controversial. Young pilots joining squadrons assume radar has always existed. Can't imagine night fighting without it. Cunningham smiles slightly. The best innovations are the ones that become invisible, the ones that transform from revolutionary to routine. He thinks back to that first operational kill in November 1940, the WWIII over Andover, destroyed using technology most experts believed wouldn't work. He remembers the skepticism, the mockery from senior officers who couldn't imagine finding aircraft in darkness using radio waves. Those skeptics were silenced by operational results. The German bombers that vanished in the dark, destroyed by fighters they never saw, wrote the final verdict on radar-directed night fighting. The mocking stopped when the killing began, and the night, once Germany's ally, became Britain's weapon.